The bruises on Eleanor's ribs screamed with every breath as she tumbled down the wooden staircase, her husband Victor's furious shouts echoing above her. And when her body finally came to rest on the dusty floor of their home in Castle Dome, Arizona, she could taste blood and defeat in equal measure. It was June of 1883, and the desert heat had turned men cruel and whiskey cheap. Eleanor Zimmerman lay crumpled at the bottom of those stairs, her calico dress torn at the shoulder. Her dark hair escaped from its pins and spreading across the floorboards like spilled ink. She tried to move, but pain lanced through her left leg, sharp and unforgiving. Above her, Victor's heavy footsteps retreated, the slam of the bedroom door final as a coffin lid. She did not know how long she lay there. Minutes felt like hours in the suffocating heat of the small house. The front door stood open, as it often did to catch any whisper of breeze, and through it she could see the dusty main street of Castle Dome, the false-fronted buildings shimmering in the afternoon sun. The mining town clung to life in the Yuma County desert, sustained by silver and stubbornness. Eleanor had come here 3 years ago as a mail-order bride, 20 years old and full of foolish hopes. Victor Zimmerman had seemed respectable in his letters, a merchant with a dry goods store. The reality had been different. He drank. He gambled. And when he lost, which was often, he found ways to make Eleanor pay for his failures. She heard bootsteps on the wooden boardwalk outside, different from Victor's stomping gait. These were measured, purposeful. Eleanor tried to call out, but her voice came as barely a whisper. The footsteps paused. "Madam," the voice was deep, concerned. "Madam, are you hurt?" The silhouette filled the doorway, blocking the harsh sunlight. As her vision cleared, Eleanor made out a tall man, broad-shouldered, removing his hat as he entered. He wore dusty trail clothes and a gun belt sat easy on his hips. His face was weathered but young, maybe 25, with dark hair and eyes that widened when he saw her crumpled form. "Jesus," he breathed, and was beside her in 3 long strides. He knelt carefully, his hands hovering as if afraid to cause more harm. "What happened? Can you speak?" "Fell," Eleanor managed, though the lie tasted bitter. She had learned not to tell the truth about such things. People did not want to get involved in a man's business with his wife. The cowboy's jaw tightened. His eyes traveled up the staircase, took in the broken railing, then returned to her face. He saw everything, Eleanor realized. The finger-shaped bruises already darkening on her arms, the split lip that was not fresh but healing from 2 days prior. The way she instinctively flinched when he moved his hand. "That leg's broken," he said quietly. "Maybe some ribs too. You need a doctor. Where's your husband?" The bedroom door opened before Eleanor could answer. Victor appeared at the top of the stairs, swaying slightly. He was a thick man gone soft around the middle, his face flushed with drink and anger. "What the hell are you doing in my house?" The cowboy rose slowly, deliberately, his body positioned between Victor and Eleanor. "Found your wife at the bottom of your stairs. She needs medical attention. She's clumsy is all, had too much sun. You can go now." Victor descended 2 steps, his hand gripping the remaining rail. "No, sir, I do not think I will." The cowboy's voice remained level, but something in it made Victor stop. "I am taking her to the doctor. You can follow if you like, but she is not staying here like this." "The hell you are. She's my wife. You have got no right." "Every man has the right to help someone who is hurt." The cowboy turned back to Eleanor, his expression softening. "Madam, I am going to lift you now. I will try not to cause pain, but there is no helping it some. Can you put your arms around my neck?" Eleanor looked between the cowboy and her husband. Fear made her heart hammer. Victor would make her pay for this later, for the humiliation of another man interfering. But the cowboy was here now, real and solid, And the alternative was lying on this floor until Victor decided to care or not care. She raised her arms. The cowboy gathered her with surprising gentleness for such a large man, one arm beneath her knees, the other supporting her back. She bit back a cry as pain flared through her leg. "I have got you," he murmured. "You are safe now." Victor came down the stairs fast, his face purple with rage. "Put her down. You cannot just walk into a man's home and take his wife." The cowboy turned, Eleanor cradled against his chest. "Try to stop me and we will have a different conversation. One I do not think you want to have." There was something in his stance, in the quiet certainty of his words, that made Victor halt. For all his bluster, he was a coward at heart. He blustered and threatened, but did not follow as the cowboy carried Eleanor out into the blazing afternoon. The sun hit like a physical blow after the dimness of the house. Eleanor closed her eyes against it, and when she opened them again, she found herself looking at the cowboy's face. He had a strong jaw, a straight nose, and his eyes were the color of dark honey. There was a scar through his left eyebrow, old and white. "What is your name?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the noise of the street. "Harrison Grant," he replied, not looking down at her but scanning the buildings ahead. "Doctor is this way, I think, near the assay office. Why are you doing this?" Now he did look at her, and the intensity in his gaze made something flutter in Eleanor's chest that had nothing to do with pain. "Because no one should be left hurt and helpless, and because that man is a coward who strikes women." They drew stairs as Harrison carried her down the street. Castle Dome was small enough that everyone knew everyone's business, and by nightfall the whole town would be talking about Eleanor Zimmerman and the stranger who carried her away. Let them talk, Eleanor thought with a kind of desperate defiance. Let them all talk. Dr. Samuel Chen's office occupied the second floor of a building that also housed a lawyer and a land surveyor. Harrison took the stairs carefully, Eleanor's weight seeming nothing to him. He shouldered open the door and called out. A small man with wire-rimmed spectacles emerged from a back room, wiping his hands on a cloth. "Good Lord," Dr. Chen said, taking in Eleanor's condition. "Bring her through here, quickly." The examination room was sparse but clean. Harrison laid Eleanor on the narrow bed with the same care he had shown throughout. He stepped back, hat in his hands, and Eleanor felt the loss of his presence like a cold wind. Dr. Chen's hands were expert and efficient as he examined her. "Broken leg, as I suspected. 2 cracked ribs. Extensive bruising." His voice was professionally neutral, but his eyes, when they met Eleanor's, held understanding. "This will need to be set. It will hurt." "I know," Eleanor said. "I can give you laudanum for the pain." "No." She had seen what laudanum did to people, how they chased that floating numbness until it consumed them. "I will bear it." Harrison stepped forward from where he had positioned himself by the window. "I will stay, if you want." Eleanor nodded, unable to speak past the sudden tightness in her throat. This stranger was showing her more kindness in an hour than Victor had in 3 years. Dr. Chen worked with swift competence. The pain of having her leg set was blinding, absolute, and Eleanor heard herself cry out despite her determination to stay quiet. Harrison was there immediately, his hand gripping hers, his voice low and steady. "Breathe, just breathe, it is almost done. You are doing fine." She clung to that voice like a lifeline, to the solid warmth of his hand, and somehow endured. When it was over, she lay gasping and shaking, her legs splinted and wrapped, her ribs bound tight. "You need rest," Dr. Chen said. "At least a week of bed rest and then careful movement for several weeks after. The ribs will heal on their own if you do not strain them. The leg will take longer." "Thank you," Eleanor managed. Dr. Chen looked at Harrison. "She cannot go back to that house." If she does, next time she might not survive. I know, Harrison said quietly. His gaze met Eleanor's. The boarding house. Mrs. Patterson runs a clean place. I have a room there. I will see if she has another. I have no money, Eleanor said, shame burning through her. Victor controls everything. Do not worry about that now. Harrison turned to the doctor. Can she be moved? Carefully. And she will need someone to help her for a while. She cannot manage stairs or much of anything on her own. I will help her. The words came simply, a statement of fact rather than an offer. Eleanor wanted to protest, to say she could not possibly accept, that it was not proper, that she had already imposed too much. But the truth was she had nowhere else to go. No family in Castle Dome, no friends close enough to take her in, and no money of her own. She had trapped herself thoroughly in her marriage to Victor. Harrison carried her again, this time through streets gone gold with approaching evening. The boarding house was a 2-story adobe structure on the edge of town, with a shaded courtyard and the sound of water from a well. Mrs. Patterson was a sturdy woman in her 50s who took one look at Eleanor and asked no questions beyond the practical. I've got a room on the ground floor, she said. Used to be storage, but I cleaned it out last month. It has got a bed and a window, not fancy but private. It sounds perfect, Eleanor said. The room was small and simple but blessedly cool, with whitewashed walls and a narrow bed covered in a clean quilt. Harrison laid Eleanor down as carefully as if she were made of glass. Mrs. Patterson bustled in with pillows to prop her leg and a basin of water. I will bring supper in an hour, she said. Stew and bread, and there is tea if you want it. When they were alone, Harrison stood by the door, his hat turning in his hands. The setting sun through the window cast his face half in shadow. I should go. Let you rest. Wait. Eleanor struggled to sit up slightly. Why did you do this? You do not even know me. Harrison was quiet for a moment. I had a sister once, younger than me. She married a man who seemed good. He was not good. By the time I got her away from him, she was so hurt inside and out that she never really healed. She died 2 years ago. Fever took her, but it was his cruelty that had already killed her spirit. His voice was rough with old grief. When I saw you at the bottom of those stairs, I saw her, and I knew I would not walk away. Tears burned in Eleanor's eyes. I am sorry about your sister. Her name was Hannah. She was stubborn and kind, and she deserved better. He looked at Eleanor directly. You deserve better too. I do not know if I can believe that anymore. Then I will believe it for you until you can. He set his hat on his head, adjusting the brim. I will be here if you need anything. My room is upstairs, 3rd door on the right. Mrs. Patterson knows to fetch me. After he left, Eleanor lay in the gathering darkness and tried to make sense of the day. This morning she had woken in her usual despair, moving carefully to avoid waking Victor, preparing his breakfast with the knowledge that any small mistake might earn his anger. Now she was in a strange room, her body broken but somehow safe, rescued by a cowboy she had never met before, Harrison Grant. She turned the name over in her mind. He had kind eyes and gentle hands and a core of steel that had faced down Victor without hesitation. He had lost a sister and carried that loss with him. And he had seen Eleanor not as a nuisance or a scandal, but as someone worth helping. Sleep came eventually, fitful and full of dreams where she was falling endlessly down stairs that had no bottom. She woke to morning light and the sound of birds in the courtyard. Her body was a symphony of pain, every breath a reminder of cracked ribs, her leg throbbing despite its stillness. There was a tap at the door and Mrs. Patterson entered with a tray. Morning, dear. I have got eggs and coffee. Can you sit up? With help, Eleanor managed it. The food was simple but good, and she realized she was ravenous. She had not eaten since yesterday morning before everything happened. That cowboy has been up since dawn, Mrs. Patterson said conversationally as she arranged the pillows. Went to your house first light, came back with a carpet bag, said it had your things in it. Eleanor's hand stilled on her coffee cup. He went to my house. Was Victor there? He was. Harrison told me your husband tried to refuse him entry. Harrison informed him that he could hand over your belongings peaceable-like, or Harrison would take them anyway, and the sheriff could sort it out after. Mrs. Patterson's eyes gleamed with approval. Victor chose peaceful. The bag's here. I will bring it in. The carpet bag contained her few dresses, her brush and pins, the daguerreotype of her parents that was her only family keepsake, and the small wooden box where she kept her mother's wedding ring, and the letters her parents had sent before they died. That Harrison had thought to take these things, that he had faced Victor again on her behalf, made emotion swell in Eleanor's throat. There was a knock, and then Harrison's voice. "Mrs. Patterson, is Eleanor awake? May I come in?" "Just a moment, Mrs." Patterson helped Eleanor arrange herself more decorously, smoothing her borrowed nightgown and the blanket. "All right." Harrison entered, and the room seemed smaller with his presence. He had shaved and changed his shirt, but there was a fresh bruise on his knuckles. He saw Eleanor notice it. "Your husband decided to take a swing at me," he said calmly. "He missed. I did not." "You hit him." Eleanor did not know how to feel about that. "Once. He will have a sore jaw but nothing more." He decided not to push further. Harrison pulled up the room's single chair and sat, his hat on his knee. "I also spoke with Sheriff Morrison, told him what happened, what I saw. He is aware of the situation now." "Victor is friends with the sheriff," Eleanor said quietly. "They play cards together." "Maybe so, but Morrison is not a fool. He knows what I saw, and he knows the whole town will be watching now. Your husband cannot afford to make waves." Harrison leaned forward slightly. "Eleanor, you need to think about what comes next. You cannot stay married to a man like that. Divorce is not easy. It is expensive and scandalous, and I have no grounds that a court would accept. A wife falling downstairs is not grounds. Being beaten is grounds. Proving it is another matter, and even if I could, I would have nothing. No money, no home, no prospects. What would I do? Where would I go?" Harrison was quiet for a moment, his dark eyes thoughtful. "I have an idea about that, but I do not want to speak of it yet. First you need to heal. The rest can wait." Over the following days, Eleanor learned what it was to be cared for. Mrs. Patterson brought meals and helped her with necessities too personal to ask of Harrison. But Harrison came every day, morning and evening, to check on her. He brought her books from the general store, newspapers from Santa Fe, wildflowers he found growing improbably in the desert. He sat and talked with her, telling stories of his life. He was from Texas originally, he told her. His family had run a cattle ranch until a drought and disease killed most of their herd. His parents had died within a year of each other, grief and hardship taking them. Harrison had worked as a drover, a ranch hand, a scout for the army. He had drifted west and south, sending money back to Hannah and her husband until he learned the truth of that marriage. By the time he got her away, it was too late. "I swore I would never ignore signs like that again," he said one evening as they watched the sunset paint the courtyard walls orange and pink. "Would never walk past someone in need." "Is that why you are in Castle Dome?" Eleanor asked. "I am working for the Castle Dome Mining Company. They hired me to help with security, moving silver shipments, dealing with claim jumpers. It pays well, and I do not plan to stay forever. Just long enough to build up a stake." "For what?" He smiled, and it transformed his serious face. "I want land, not a big ranch like my father had. Something smaller, manageable. Good water, good grass. Maybe in New Mexico territory or up north in Colorado. Somewhere I can build something that lasts. Eleanor found herself thinking about that dream long after Harrison left for the night. Land, a home, something built to last. She had wanted those things once too, before Victor taught her to want nothing beyond survival. As days became a week, Eleanor grew stronger. She could sit up without help, manage her own meals, even stand briefly on her good leg with support. The pain in her ribs faded to a dull ache. Dr. Chen visited and pronounced himself satisfied with her progress. "Another week and you can start putting weight on that leg," he said. "Carefully, with a crutch, but you are healing well." What was also healing, though Eleanor barely dared acknowledge it, was something inside her. The constant fear she had lived with for 3 years was receding. She laughed at Mrs. Patterson's dry wit. She looked forward to Harrison's visits with an anticipation that was entirely new. She began to remember who she had been before Victor, and to imagine who she might become after. Harrison seemed to feel it too. Their conversations grew longer, more personal. He told her about the books he loved, about places he had seen, about his hopes for the future. She told him about growing up in Missouri, about her parents who had run a small bakery, about how she had always loved the smell of bread rising and the satisfaction of creating something with her own hands. "I was foolish to come west as a mail-order bride," she admitted one evening. "I thought it was romantic, an adventure." "It was brave," Harrison corrected gently. "Maybe not wise, but brave. You took a chance on a future." "I chose poorly." "You chose based on lies he told you. That is not your fault." His voice was firm. "Eleanor, you need to understand that what he did to you, that was his choice. His failing, not yours." She wanted to believe him. Some days she almost did. It was midway through her second week at the boarding house when Victor appeared. Eleanor was sitting in the courtyard, her leg propped on a stool, shelling peas for Mrs. Patterson. She heard his voice from inside, loud and belligerent, and her hands began to shake. "I want to see my wife. You cannot keep her from me. It is not legal. She does not want to see you." That was Mrs. Patterson, her voice hard as iron. "You should go." "I will not go. Eleanor, Eleanor, get out here." Eleanor froze, the old terror flooding back. She could not move, could not think, could only hear his voice getting closer. Then Harrison was there, stepping into the courtyard from the side entrance. He must have been nearby, must have heard. He positioned himself between Eleanor and the door to the house. "You need to leave," Harrison said. "Now." Victor appeared behind him, pushing past Mrs. Patterson. He looked haggard, his jaw still showing the yellow-green remnants of Harrison's fist. When he saw Eleanor, his face contorted. "Look at you, sitting there like a lady while I am struggling to keep the house running. You need to come home. I need you." "No." The word came from Eleanor's lips before she could think. "I am not coming back. You do not have a choice. You are my wife." "That may be legally true," Harrison said quietly, "but it does not give you the right to drag her anywhere. She has said no. That is enough." Victor's face went purple. "This is your fault. You have poisoned her against me, filled her head with lies. I have told her only truths, that she deserves safety, that what you did to her was wrong, that she has choices." "She has no choices. She is my wife." Victor lunged forward, reaching for Eleanor. Harrison caught him by the shoulder, spun him around, and slammed him against the courtyard wall hard enough to knock the breath from him. "Touch her and you will lose more than your dignity," Harrison said, his voice gone cold and dangerous. "I promise you that." Sheriff Morrison appeared in the doorway, summoned by Mrs. Patterson. He was a weathered man with gray in his mustache and eyes that missed little. "What is happening here?" "This man is threatening me," Victor gasped. "He has stolen my wife and now he assaults me." "Is that how you see it?" Morrison looked at Harrison, who released Victor and stepped back. "I see a man who will not accept that his wife has left him. I am preventing him from forcing her to return." The sheriff looked at Eleanor. "Is that true, Mrs. Zimmerman? You left of your own will?" Eleanor drew a shaking breath. This was the moment. Once she spoke, there would be no going back. "Yes, I left because my husband pushed me down the stairs and broke my leg. Because he has hurt me many times before, I am not going back to him." The courtyard went silent. Victor's mouth opened and closed. "That is a lie. She fell. She is always clumsy. I did not fall, you pushed me, and I am done lying about it." Eleanor met the sheriff's gaze steadily despite her fear. "I want to divorce him." Morrison's expression was carefully neutral. "That is a legal matter, Mrs. Zimmerman, complicated. I know. But I am going to do it anyway." The sheriff turned to Victor. "You should go home. Do not come back here unless she invites you. Understood? You cannot do this. She is lying. I never touched her." "Victor," Morrison said quietly, "half the town has heard you shouting at her over the years. I have seen her with bruises more times than I can count. Leave now while you can do so peacefully." Victor looked between them all, his face twisted with rage and humiliation. "You will regret this," he spat at Eleanor. "All of you will." He shoved past Morrison and was gone. In the silence that followed, Eleanor realized she was shaking. Harrison knelt beside her chair, his hands covering hers. "You are safe. He is gone. He will come back. If he does, I will be here." Harrison's voice was steady, certain. "I promise you, Eleanor, he will not hurt you again." Sheriff Morrison cleared his throat. "Madam, if you are serious about divorce, you should speak with William Foster. He is the lawyer upstairs from Dr. Chen. He has handled such things before." "Thank you, Sheriff." After Morrison left, Mrs. Patterson brought tea laced with whiskey, and Eleanor drank it gratefully. Harrison stayed in the courtyard, keeping watch, and Eleanor felt safe in a way she had not felt in years. That night, lying in her narrow bed, Eleanor allowed herself to truly think about the future for the first time. Divorce would take months, maybe a year or more. It would cost money she did not have. But sitting in that courtyard, speaking the truth aloud, she had felt something break free inside her. She was done being Victor's victim. Whatever came next, she would face it standing upright. The following morning, Harrison helped her navigate the stairs to William Foster's office. The lawyer was a thin man with kind eyes who listened to her story without interruption. When she finished, he sat back in his chair. "Arizona territory has provisions for divorce in cases of cruel treatment," he said. "Testimony from Dr. Chen about your injuries will help. The fact that a witness, Mr. Grant, saw the aftermath is also valuable. But I will not lie to you, Mrs. Zimmerman. Your husband will fight this. It will be unpleasant." "I do not care," Eleanor said. "I want my freedom. Then I will help you get it. As for my fee, we can work something out, perhaps payment over time once you are able to work." "I can pay," Harrison said quietly. Both Eleanor and Foster looked at him. "Consider it a loan," he told Eleanor. "You can repay me when you are able." "I cannot accept that. It is too much." "It is my money and my choice. Let me do this." They argued about it in the street outside, Eleanor leaning on the crutch Dr. Chen had provided, Harrison patient and immovable. Finally, Eleanor gave in, too exhausted to fight and too desperate for the help. "I will repay every cent," she said fiercely. "I know you will." Harrison smiled at her, that rare smile that made her heart do strange things. "You are the most stubborn woman I have ever met." "Stubbornness kept me alive the last 3 years. Then I am grateful for it." As Eleanor's leg healed and the legal proceedings began, she and Harrison fell into a routine. He still worked for the mining company, riding out with silver shipments or patrolling the claims, but whenever he was in town, he came to see her. They took walks together, slow circuits of Castle Dome with Eleanor leaning on her crutch and Harrison matching his long stride to her halting pace. They talked about everything and nothing. He made her laugh with stories of his travels. She told him about her dreams of opening a bakery someday, supporting herself with her own work. "You should do it," he said one evening as they sat in the courtyard watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. "When all this is settled, you should do exactly that. It takes money to start a business. It takes determination more than money. You have plenty of that." Eleanor looked at him in the lamplight spilling from the boarding house windows. He sat relaxed in his chair, his hat tipped back, his profile strong against the night. Something in her chest tightened with an emotion she was almost afraid to name. "Why are you being so kind to me?" she asked softly. Harrison turned his head, his dark eyes meeting hers. "At first because you needed help and I could give it. But now," he paused, seeming to choose his words carefully, "now because I find myself caring what happens to you, because your happiness matters to me. Because when I think about riding out of Castle Dome eventually, the thought of leaving you behind makes me feel like I am missing something vital." Eleanor's breath caught. "Harrison, I know it is too soon," he said quickly. "You are still healing, still married, still figuring out who you are outside of that. I am not asking you for anything. I just wanted you to know. So you understand why I am staying, why I am helping. It is not charity, Eleanor. It is because I care." She did not know what to say. The feelings growing in her chest were too large, too complicated. She cared for him too, she realized. Cared for his steadiness and his strength, his kindness and his honor. But she was still legally Victor's wife, still broken in ways that would take more than a few weeks to heal. It was too much, too fast. "I do not know what I feel," she admitted. "Everything is confused. You have been so good to me and I am grateful, but I do not know if what I feel is gratitude or something else, and I do not want to mistake one for the other." "That is honest," Harrison said. "I can respect that. Take your time, figure yourself out. I will still be here." The divorce proceedings dragged through the summer heat. Victor contested everything, claimed Eleanor was mentally unfit, claimed she had abandoned him, claimed Harrison had seduced her away. It was ugly and exhausting and public in the way only small-town scandals could be. Eleanor endured the stares and whispers, held her head high when women she had thought friendly crossed the street to avoid her, but she also found unexpected support. Dr. Chen testified about her injuries with a precision that left no doubt they came from violence. Mrs. Patterson spoke character references that brought tears to Eleanor's eyes. And Harrison stood as her witness, describing exactly what he had seen that June day, his words measured but devastating in their detail. Through it all, Eleanor grew stronger. Her leg healed enough that she could walk without the crutch, though she still limped. She began helping Mrs. Patterson in the boarding house kitchen, kneading bread and rolling pastry, finding peace in the familiar work. Mrs. Patterson praised her skills and started letting her take over more of the baking. "You have got a gift," the older woman said one morning, biting into one of Eleanor's cinnamon rolls. "These are better than anything I have ever made." Eleanor flushed with pleasure. It had been so long since anyone praised her for anything. By September, the legal battles were reaching their conclusion. The judge, brought in from Yuma, heard all the testimony and evidence. He was a stern man but fair, and when he looked at Eleanor in the courtroom, she thought she saw sympathy in his eyes. "It is clear to this court," he said on a blazingly hot afternoon in late September, "that Mrs. Zimmerman has suffered cruel treatment at the hands of her husband. The evidence of her injuries, combined with witness testimony, is compelling. Further, Mr. Zimmerman has shown no remorse for his actions and has instead chosen to impugn his wife's character and sanity. Therefore, this court grants the petition for divorce. The marriage between Victor Zimmerman and Eleanor Zimmerman is hereby dissolved." The gavel fell like thunder. Eleanor sat frozen, unable to quite believe it. Free. She was free. Victor erupted in fury, shouting that it was unjust, that she was a liar, that Harrison had paid off the judge. The sheriff and his deputy escorted him forcibly from the courtroom. Eleanor watched him go and felt nothing but relief. Outside, in the autumn sunlight, Harrison took her hands in his. "You did it," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "You are free." "I am free," she repeated wonderingly. Then she was crying, great wrenching sobs of relief and release, and Harrison pulled her into his arms and held her while she fell apart. That night, Mrs. Patterson organized a small celebration dinner. Dr. Chen came, and Lawyer Foster, and Sheriff Morrison with his wife. They toasted Eleanor's courage and her future, and she felt surrounded by warmth and goodwill. Later, when the guests had gone and Mrs. Patterson had retired, Eleanor found Harrison in the courtyard. He stood by the well, looking up at the stars. "Thank you," she said softly, coming to stand beside him. "For everything. I would not have survived this without you." "You are stronger than you know," Harrison said. "You would have found a way, maybe, but I am glad I did not have to do it alone." She took a breath. "Harrison, when you spoke before about caring for me, you still feel that way?" He turned to look at her, his face serious. "I do. I have been thinking about what you said, about figuring out what I feel, and I think I know now." She met his eyes. "I care for you too, more than care. When you ride out with the silver shipments, I worry until you return. When you smile at me, I feel warm all through. When I think about my future, I want you in it. Eleanor." Her name on his lips was a prayer and a question. "I know it has only been a few months. I know I am just free from a terrible marriage. Maybe it is too soon. But I also know that life is short and uncertain, and when something good comes along, you should not let it slip away." She reached for his hands. "I am not asking you to marry me tomorrow. I am not even asking you to court me properly. I am just telling you that I have feelings for you, and I want to see where they lead." Harrison's smile was slow and wonderful. "I would very much like to see where they lead too." He kissed her then, gentle and careful, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. She did not want to. She leaned into him, into the warmth and strength of him, and kissed him back. It was nothing like the rough, taking kisses Victor had subjected her to. This was mutual and sweet and full of promise. When they parted, both slightly breathless, Harrison rested his forehead against hers. "I will court you properly," he said. "I will do this right. You deserve that." "I would like that," Eleanor whispered, and so Harrison courted her. He brought her wildflowers and books. He took her on rides in a borrowed buggy, out into the desert to see the strange beauty of saguaro cacti and distant mountains. He came to dinners at the boarding house and charmed Mrs. Patterson. He was patient with Eleanor's occasional moments of panic, the times when something would trigger a memory and she would freeze or flinch. He held her when she cried and celebrated with her when she laughed. Eleanor bloomed under his attention. She regained weight she had lost during her marriage, her face filling out and color returning to her cheeks. She started baking commercially, selling bread and pastries to the hotel and the restaurant. The money was modest, but it was hers, earned by her own hands, and the pride she felt was immense. In November, Harrison told her about a property he had been looking at. "It is in New Mexico territory near Silver City. 20 acres with a stream running through it. Good grass, some timber. There is a small cabin on it, needs work but livable. The owner is willing to sell at a fair price." "It sounds wonderful," Eleanor said. They were walking through Castle Dome's small cemetery, an odd place for a stroll but peaceful in the cool evening air. "I am going to buy it," Harrison said. "I have saved enough for the down payment and to stock it with a small herd." "It is what I have been working toward." Eleanor felt her heart sink even as she smiled. "I am happy for you. It is your dream." Harrison stopped walking and turned to face her. "It is my dream, but it is incomplete without you." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. "Eleanor Zimmerman, I know we have not been courting long by conventional standards, but there is nothing conventional about us. I love you. I love your strength and your courage. I love your stubbornness and your kindness. I love the way you sing when you bake and the way you look at the stars. I want to build that ranch with you. I want to wake up beside you every morning and fall asleep with you every night. Will you marry me?" Eleanor stared at the ring in the box, a simple gold band with a small garnet. "Yes," she breathed. "Yes, Harrison, I will marry you." He slipped the ring on her finger and kissed her with a passion that made her dizzy. When they broke apart, both laughing, he lifted her and spun her around, and Eleanor felt lighter than air. They were married in December, a small ceremony in the Castle Dome Church with Mrs. Patterson and Dr. Chen standing as witnesses. Eleanor wore a simple blue dress and carried wildflowers, and Harrison stood tall and proud in his best suit. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Eleanor felt none of the dread that had accompanied her first marriage. Only joy, pure and bright. Their wedding night at the boarding house was everything Eleanor had not known it could be. Harrison was patient and tender, attuned to her needs and her fears. He gave her time to relax, to trust, and when they finally came together, it was mutual and beautiful and right. Afterward, lying in his arms, Eleanor cried again. "Did I hurt you?" Harrison asked worriedly. "No. No, you did not hurt me. I just never knew it could be like this. I never knew I could feel safe and loved and whole all at once." He held her closer. "You are all those things. You always will be with me." They spent the winter preparing for their move. Harrison gave notice to the mining company. Eleanor taught Mrs. Patterson her bread recipes and said goodbye to the woman who had become like a mother to her. They packed their few belongings and said farewell to Castle Dome, to the place where Eleanor's old life had ended and her new one had begun. The journey to Silver City took a week by wagon, through desert and mountains, under skies so vast and blue they seemed infinite. Eleanor sat beside Harrison on the wagon bench, her hand in his, and watched the landscape change. When they finally crested a rise, and Harrison pointed out their property, a valley with a stream glinting in the winter sun and mountains rising purple in the distance, Eleanor felt tears of happiness. The cabin was small and rough, but they made it a home. Harrison worked on repairs while Eleanor cleaned and organized. They bought chickens and a milk cow, started a vegetable garden, and brought in a small herd of cattle. It was hard work, relentless and exhausting, but they did it together, and that made all the difference. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch Harrison built, watching the sunset and talking about their days. Eleanor baked bread in the fireplace oven and dreamed of someday having a proper stove. Harrison broke horses for neighbors and slowly built their herd. They were not wealthy, but they had enough, and more importantly, they had each other. Spring brought wildflowers and Eleanor's realization that she was pregnant. She told Harrison one evening over dinner, nervous about his reaction. His face lit up with joy so pure it took her breath away. "A baby," he said wonderingly. "We are going to have a baby. Are you happy?" Happy does not begin to cover it. He came around the table and pulled her into his arms. "You have given me everything, Eleanor. A home, a future, a family. I love you more than words can say." Their son was born in November of 1884, a year after their wedding. The labor was long and difficult, with only a midwife from Silver City to help. But when Eleanor held her son for the first time, all the pain was forgotten. They named him Henry Samuel Grant, after both their fathers. Harrison was a devoted father, taking to parenthood with the same steady competence he brought to everything. He walked the floor with Henry when he cried at night. changed diapers without complaint, and looked at his son with such love that Eleanor sometimes had to look away from the intensity of it. As Henry grew from baby to toddler, Eleanor and Harrison grew their ranch. They added more cattle, built a proper barn, expanded the cabin into a house with 3 bedrooms and a kitchen with a real stove. Eleanor started baking for sale again, riding into Silver City once a week with goods that quickly gained a reputation. Harrison's horses were sought after for their training and temperament. In 1886, their daughter was born. They named her Grace Hannah, for Harrison's sister, and for the grace they felt had brought them together. Grace had her father's dark eyes and her mother's determination. She was barely walking when she started following Harrison everywhere, insisting on helping with the horses. Life was not always easy. There were droughts and hard winters, sick cattle and lean times. There were moments when Eleanor still woke from nightmares of Victor, when shadows made her flinch. But Harrison was always there, patient and steady, reminding her she was safe. They heard news of Victor only once, a few years after they left Arizona. Word came that he had drunk himself to death, choking on his own vomit in a back room of a saloon. Eleanor felt nothing at the news beyond a vague relief that he could never threaten her again. The years passed in the way of good years, quickly and full. Henry grew tall and serious, with his father's build and his mother's kind heart. Grace was wild and fearless, riding before she was 5 and able to rope a calf by 7. Eleanor's bakery became a fixture in Silver City, and Harrison's ranch prospered. On their 10th wedding anniversary, they sat on their porch watching Henry and Grace play in the stream. The house behind them was solid and warm, built with their own hands. The land around them was green and flourishing, dotted with cattle and horses. "Do you ever regret it?" Eleanor asked, "taking on a broken woman and all her troubles?" Harrison turned to look at her, his face weathered by sun and wind but his eyes still warm. "You were never broken. Hurt, yes, but not broken, and I have never regretted a single moment." He took her hand, his thumb rubbing over her knuckles. "You saved me as much as I saved you, you know. I was drifting before I met you, just moving from place to place with no real purpose. You gave me a reason to build something permanent. You gave me a home." "We gave each other that," Eleanor said softly. She leaned against his shoulder, watching their children play, and felt contentment settle over her like a warm blanket. The sun set in gold and crimson, painting the New Mexico sky in colors too beautiful for words. In the distance, a coyote called. The stream burbled its endless song. And on the porch of their ranch, Eleanor and Harrison sat together, hands linked, hearts full, having built from pain and courage something that would last forever. Their love, forged in the heat of an Arizona summer and tempered by hardship, was as solid as the mountains around them and as enduring as the land itself. Years continued to unfold in their predictable and unpredictable ways. By 1890, Henry was 7 and already helping his father with the harder ranch work, mending fences and herding cattle with a serious dedication that made both parents smile. Grace at 4 was still too small for heavy work, but she had her own list of chores, feeding chickens and gathering eggs, and she did them with fierce pride. Eleanor's baking business had grown beyond her expectations. What started as selling bread and simple pastries in Silver City had expanded to wedding cakes and special orders that people traveled from surrounding towns to purchase. She had hired a local girl, Maria, to help with the work, and the kitchen Harrison had built for her was always warm with the smell of sugar and yeast. Harrison's reputation as a horse trainer had spread even further. Men came from as far as Texas and California to buy horses he had trained. knowing they were getting animals with good temperaments and solid training. The ranch now covered 40 acres, having bought the adjacent property when it came available, and supported a healthy herd of cattle along with the horses. They were not rich by any means, but they were comfortable in a way Eleanor had never imagined possible during her years with Victor. More than comfortable in material terms, they were rich in the things that mattered: love, family, purpose, and peace. One evening in late spring, after the children were asleep, Eleanor and Harrison sat by the fire. She was mending one of Henry's shirts, her needle flashing in the lamplight. Harrison was working on a new bridle, his hands steady on the leather. "I have been thinking," Eleanor said, breaking the comfortable silence, "about building something more permanent for the bakery. A shop in Silver City, maybe, instead of working from the kitchen and delivering everything." Harrison looked up with interest. "You want to expand that much?" "I do. The demand is there. And Maria is good enough now that she could run the shop when I need to be home with the children. It would mean a real investment, buying or leasing a building, getting proper equipment. But I think it could work. Then we should do it." Harrison set down the bridle. "You have worked hard to build this business. You deserve a proper place for it. It would take most of our savings. Money is meant to be used, and I trust your judgment." He smiled at her. "You have turned bread into a small fortune. I have no doubt you can make this work." They talked late into the night, planning and dreaming. By the time they went to bed, Eleanor's head was spinning with possibilities. A shop with a big window facing the main street, a proper oven, maybe two. A counter where people could sit and have coffee with their pastries. She could see it all so clearly. The next months were a flurry of activity. They found a small building in Silver City, formerly a dressmaker's shop, that was perfect. Harrison and some neighbors helped renovate it, building shelves and a counter, installing the large ovens Eleanor had ordered from Denver. Eleanor painted the walls a cheerful yellow and sewed curtains for the windows. Grant's Bakery opened in September of 1890, and from the first day it was a success. People came not just for the bread and pastries, though those were excellent, but for the warm atmosphere Eleanor created. She made everyone feel welcome, remembered names and preferences, asked about families. The shop became a gathering place, somewhere people lingered over coffee and conversation. Maria proved to be not just a good baker but a good manager as well. She handled the shop several days a week, leaving Eleanor free to be home with the children and work on the ranch. The two women worked well together, and Eleanor found herself grateful for the friendship as much as the help. Henry started school that year, riding into Silver City each morning with Eleanor when she went to the bakery. He was a good student, quiet and thoughtful, excelling at reading and arithmetic. Grace would start the following year, though she complained bitterly about having to wait. "I can read already," she insisted one evening at dinner. "Mama taught me. Why do I have to wait until I am 6? "Because that is the rule," Harrison said, trying not to smile at her indignation. "One more year will not hurt you." "It is not fair," Grace grumbled, but she accepted it the way she accepted all of her father's decisions, with trust if not enthusiasm. In 1892, Eleanor discovered she was pregnant again. She was 32 now, and the pregnancy felt different from her first two, harder on her body. Harrison worried constantly, hovering and fussing until Eleanor had to laugh and shoo him away. "I am fine," she insisted. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time. I have done this twice before. That does not stop me from worrying." Their third child, a son they named James William, was born in April of 1893. The birth went smoothly despite Eleanor's concerns, and James was a healthy, loud baby who made his presence known from the start. Henry, now 10, was fascinated by his new brother. Grace, at 7, was less impressed. "He cries too much," she complained after a particularly sleepless night. "Can we send him back? You cried just as much when you were a baby," Eleanor told her, tired but amused. "We kept you. We will keep him too." The ranch continued to prosper. Harrison had hired a young man named Peter to help with the work, and the addition of another pair of hands made a significant difference. Peter was 19, good with horses and cattle, and grateful for the steady work and fair wages Harrison provided. Eleanor's bakery was now a fixture in Silver City, and Maria had become essential to its operation. They had hired another girl to help with the increased demand, and there was talk of expanding into the building next door when it became available. Life was full and busy and sometimes exhausting, but it was good. Eleanor would sometimes pause in her work, whether kneading bread or sewing clothes or reading to the children, and feel amazement wash over her. This was her life. This beautiful, ordinary, wonderful life. So different from what she had endured, so much more than she had ever hoped for. On their 15th wedding anniversary, Harrison surprised her with a trip. Mrs. Patterson, now retired and living with her daughter in Silver City, agreed to stay with the children. Harrison took Eleanor to Santa Fe, a journey of several days, and they stayed in a real hotel with running water and electric lights. They walked the plaza, visited the cathedral, ate in restaurants where other people served them. They talked without interruption, remembered who they were as a couple beyond being parents and business owners, and they rediscovered each other in the privacy of their hotel room, taking time they rarely had at home. "I love our life," Eleanor said one evening as they watched the sunset from the hotel's roof garden. "I love our children and our work and our home, but this has been wonderful too, time with just you." "We should do it more often," Harrison said. "Maybe not as far or as fancy, but getting away together. The children are old enough now that we can leave them for short times." "I would like that." The years of the 1890s brought changes to the wider world that touched their lives in small ways. New Mexico was pushing for statehood, though it would not achieve it for years yet. The railroad expanded, making travel and shipping easier. Automobiles were being developed, though they were still rare and expensive novelties. Henry grew into a young man, tall and strong like his father, with a quiet competence that made him valuable on the ranch. He had inherited Harrison's skill with horses and Eleanor's head for business, a combination that served him well. By 16, he was handling many of the horse training contracts himself. Grace remained wild and fierce, more comfortable in trousers than dresses despite Eleanor's occasional protests. She could outride most boys her age and was not afraid of hard work. She dreamed of having her own ranch someday, with horses bred for speed and endurance. James was the baby, even as he grew older, with a sunny disposition that made everyone love him. He was bright and curious, always asking questions, always wanting to know how things worked. He followed Harrison and Henry around the ranch, soaking up knowledge like a sponge. In 1900, as a new century began, Eleanor turned 40 and Harrison 42. They celebrated quietly, just the family, but it felt momentous somehow. They had survived so much, built so much, loved so much. Looking at their children, strong and healthy and happy, Eleanor felt a satisfaction so deep it was almost painful. "We did well," Harrison said that night, echoing her thoughts as he so often did. They were in bed, the house quiet around them, moonlight streaming through the window. "We did," Eleanor agreed. She was graying now, and there were lines around her eyes and mouth. Harrison's dark hair was shot through with silver, his face deeply weathered from years in the sun. But when he looked at her, she still saw the same love in his eyes that had been there from the beginning. "Do you ever think about that day," she asked, "when you found me at the bottom of those stairs?" "Sometimes, not as often as I used to. I think about it more than I probably should. How everything could have been so different if you had not come by that house at that exact moment, if you had not stopped, if you had not cared." Harrison pulled her closer. "But I did stop, I did care, and everything that came after all of this, it was meant to be. You believe in fate." "I believe that some things are meant to happen. Whether you call it fate or God or just luck, I do not know. But you and me, our family, this life, it feels right in a way nothing else ever has." Eleanor kissed him, slow and deep, and he responded with the passion that still existed between them after all these years. They made love quietly, mindful of their children sleeping nearby, but with a tenderness and connection that came from truly knowing another person. The first decade of the new century brought more changes. Henry married a girl named Sarah from Silver City, a schoolteacher with a gentle manner and a quick mind. They built a small house on the far end of the ranch property and started their own family. Eleanor became a grandmother in 1902, and holding Henry's daughter for the first time brought back floods of memories of holding Henry himself as a newborn. Grace, stubborn as ever, showed no interest in marriage despite several young men trying to court her. She was more interested in expanding the horse operation, in breeding for specific traits. Harrison gave her a section of land and seed money, and she threw herself into the project with characteristic intensity. James, grown tall and lean at 11, announced that he wanted to be a lawyer when he grew up. "Someone has to make sure people are treated fairly," he said seriously. "Like that lawyer helped Mama with her divorce." Eleanor and Harrison exchanged glances over his head, touched that their son had absorbed that lesson about justice and fairness. The ranch continued to thrive. They now employed 3 full-time workers year-round and additional help during busy seasons. The bakery in Silver City had indeed expanded into the building next door and now employed 6 people. Eleanor still oversaw everything, but had stepped back from the daily operations, trusting Maria and her staff to handle most of it. In 1905, tragedy struck when Peter, the young man who had worked for them for over a decade, was killed in a riding accident. A horse spooked and threw him, and he hit his head on a rock. He was 32 years old with a wife and 2 small children. Harrison blamed himself, though there was nothing he could have done differently. Eleanor watched him struggle with the guilt, and she held him when he cried at Peter's funeral. They made sure Peter's widow had money to support herself and her children, setting up a fund that would see them through. "Life is fragile," Harrison said that night. "We forget that sometimes when things are going well, how quickly it can all change. But we cannot live in fear of that," Eleanor replied. "We can only appreciate what we have while we have it." As they moved deeper into the decade, the ranch and bakery both continued to prosper. Henry and Sarah had 3 children now, and they were talking about expanding their own operations. Grace had developed a reputation for breeding excellent cutting horses, and her stock was in demand across the territory. James, now 16, was preparing to go to university, having won a scholarship based on his excellent grades. Eleanor's hair was more gray than brown now, and arthritis had started to trouble her hands. Harrison moved slower than he once had, his joints stiff in the mornings. But they were still active, still engaged with their work and their family. On their 30th wedding anniversary in December of 1914, their children threw them a party. The house was full of people, family and friends and neighbors, all gathered to celebrate. There were toasts and laughter and stories told of the early days. Late in the evening, when most of the guests had gone home and the children were cleaning up, Eleanor and Harrison slipped out to the porch. The December night was cold but clear, stars sharp in the sky. 30 years, Eleanor said wonderingly. How did it go so fast? I do not know. But I would not trade a single moment of it. Harrison wrapped his arm around her shoulders and she leaned into his warmth. You have made me the happiest man alive, Eleanor Grant. And you gave me a life I never dreamed possible. You saved me, Harrison, in every way a person can be saved. We saved each other, he corrected gently. You gave me purpose and a home and a family. Before you, I was just drifting. You made me want to be better, do better, build something lasting. They stood together in the cold and the dark, holding each other. Two people who had found each other in the worst of circumstances and created the best of lives. The ranch spread around them, solid and real, built with their own hands. Inside the house, their children and grandchildren moved about, living proof of the love they shared. The years continued their steady march. James became a lawyer and set up practice in Santa Fe, taking on cases that interested him more than cases that paid well, often representing those who could not afford proper legal counsel. Henry expanded his section of the ranch and was now considered one of the best cattlemen in the territory. Grace married eventually, though not until she was 32, to a quiet man who loved horses as much as she did. New Mexico finally achieved statehood in 1912, something Harrison had lived to see. He was 69 when Eleanor passed away peacefully in her sleep in 1923 at the age of 63. Her heart, the doctor said, though Harrison knew it was simply that she was tired and ready to rest. He buried her on a hill overlooking the ranch, under an old cottonwood tree they had planted together in their first year. The entire family gathered for the funeral, children and grandchildren and even great-grandchildren. Harrison stood at her grave and spoke of how she had been the strongest, bravest woman he had ever known, how she had built a life from ashes, how she had loved fiercely and completely. She was scared and hurt when I found her, he said, his voice breaking. But she never let that define her. She chose to heal, to grow, to love again. She chose life, and she made my life worth living. Harrison lived 3 more years, staying active on the ranch until the very end. He died in 1926 at the age of 73 and was buried beside Eleanor under that cottonwood tree. His children and grandchildren gathered again, and they spoke of his kindness, his strength, his unwavering love for their mother. The ranch continued, passed down through the generations. Henry's children, and then their children worked the land that Harrison and Eleanor had built. Grace's horse breeding program became legendary in the state. James's legal practice thrived, and he taught his children about justice and fairness, about standing up for those who could not stand up for themselves. And every year, on the anniversary of that day in June 1883, when Harrison found Eleanor at the bottom of those stairs, the family gathered at the graves on the hill. They told the story of how their family began, of a cowboy who refused to walk past someone in need, and a woman who found the courage to choose a different life. They spoke of love that overcame cruelty, of strength born from pain, of 2 people who built something beautiful and lasting from the wreckage of what came before. The story became family legend, passed from generation to generation, a reminder that from the darkest moments could come the brightest light, that one act of kindness could change everything, and that true love, once found, could build something that lasted forever.